September 1974. Best-selling author Stephen King checks into room 217 of the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. It's the off-season. The hotel is nearly empty. That night, he experiences a nightmare so vivid, so terrifying, that he wakes in a cold sweat and immediately begins writing notes that will become one of the most famous horror novels of all time, The Shining. But here's what most people don't know. King wasn't the first guest to experience something unexplainable in that room, and he certainly wasn't the last. For over a century, guests at historic hotels across America have reported the same phenomenon: voices in empty corridors, whispers outside their doors, conversations in rooms where no one stands. Some dismiss it as drafts through old buildings, tricks of tired minds in unfamiliar places. But what happens when dozens of people, across decades, in different locations, report hearing the exact same voice, saying the exact same words? Have you ever heard a voice call your name when you knew, absolutely knew, you were alone? Before we go deeper into this case, if you're finding this investigation compelling, please drop a like and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It helps us bring you more cases like this, stories that deserve to be told, voices that deserve to be heard. And it's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, let's talk about what happened. In September 1974, the Stanley Hotel sits at 7,522 feet above sea level in Estes Park, Colorado. Built in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, inventor, entrepreneur, and tuberculosis survivor seeking clean mountain air, the hotel was designed as a beacon of luxury in the American wilderness. Colonial revival architecture. 420 rooms when it opened. Steam heating, electric lighting, even a hydroelectric power plant. It was cutting edge for its time. But the Stanley had something else. Something the architects didn't plan for. The building's unique acoustic properties created what engineers now call sound channels, corridors and ventilation systems that carry voices, footsteps, and whispers across impossible distances. A conversation on the fourth floor could be heard in the basement. A laugh in the billiard room might echo 3 floors up. The Stanley was, quite literally, a building designed to whisper. But acoustic anomalies don't explain what happened on June 25th, 1911. Room 217. A gas leak. Chambermaid Elizabeth Wilson enters to light the lanterns as part of her evening duties. The room fills with acetylene gas from a malfunctioning lighting system. She strikes a match. The blast destroys everything. The floor above the dining hall collapses. Elizabeth Wilson is thrown through the floor, landing in the wreckage below. Somehow, impossibly, she survives with only broken ankles. She recovers, returns to work at the Stanley, continues her duties for decades until her death at age 90. But guests staying in room 217 began reporting something strange almost immediately after the explosion. They heard a woman's voice, always at night, always whispering. Stephen King checks into the Stanley Hotel with his wife, Tabitha. It's the last night before the hotel closes for the winter season. They're given room 217, the same room where Elizabeth Wilson nearly died 63 years earlier. That night, King experiences what he later describes as the most vivid nightmare of his life. He sees his young son running through the hotel's corridors, chased by something unseen. Doors slam. Whispers fill the halls. And in room 217, something watches. He wakes. Immediately begins outlining what will become The Shining. But here's what King rarely discusses in interviews. He wasn't the only guest to experience phenomena in that room that season. Hotel records show 3 other guests in September 1974 requested room changes from 217. All 3 cited the same reason: disturbing sounds during the night. One guest, a businessman from Denver named Richard Castellano, filed a written complaint. His statement, preserved in the hotel archives, reads, "I was awakened approximately 2:30 a.m. by the sound of a woman's voice speaking directly outside my door. I heard her say clearly, 'Are you comfortable? Can I bring you anything?' I opened the door immediately. The hallway was empty. I checked the stairwells. Nothing. I returned to my room and heard the voice again, this time inside the room. I'm still here if you need me. I spent the remainder of the night in the lobby. Elizabeth Wilson's job as a chambermaid included one specific duty that defined her service: checking on guests late in the evening to ensure they had everything they needed. Are you comfortable? Can I bring you anything? Those were the exact words housekeeping staff were trained to say. The question isn't whether the Stanley Hotel is haunted. The question is, why do guests report hearing the same voice, speaking the same words across decades? If the Stanley Hotel is where whispers echo through acoustics and architecture, the 1886 Crescent Hotel in Arkansas is where whispers echo through suffering. The Crescent opened in May 1886 as one of America's most luxurious mountain resorts. Wealthy families traveled from across the country to experience its mineral springs, fine dining, and stunning Ozark mountain views. But by the 1930s, the Great Depression had gutted the hotel's clientele. It sat abandoned for years, until a man named Norman Baker arrived. Baker was a radio personality, inventor, and self-proclaimed medical genius. He claimed to have discovered a cure for cancer, a secret formula that the medical establishment was desperate to suppress. He was a fraud. But that didn't stop him from buying the Crescent Hotel in 1937 and transforming it into the Baker Cancer Hospital. Desperate families, watching loved ones die from incurable cancer, paid everything they had for Baker's treatments. He examined patients in the basement, the same basement that now serves as the hotel's morgue tour attraction. He administered injections of mysterious compounds. He promised miracles. People died. Many people. And their bodies were quietly removed. Their families told the treatments simply hadn't worked in time. In 1940, federal authorities shut down the hospital. Baker fled to Mexico. The Crescent sat empty again, stained by suffering. But the voices never left. Room 419. Housekeepers working the night shift report the same encounter, repeated across decades. They knock, enter to turn down the bed. And standing near the window is a woman, middle-aged, wearing a hospital gown from the 1930s. She turns, smiles politely, and introduces herself. The housekeepers respond because she seems so real, so present. They exchange pleasantries. Theodora mentions she's a patient of Dr. Baker's. She's waiting for her treatment to work. And then she vanishes, not fading, not dissolving. Simply not there anymore. This has happened at least 12 documented times since 1995. Different housekeepers, different years, but always the same woman, always the same name, always the same polite introduction. Hotel historians researched Baker's patient records, fragments that survived his hasty departure. They found her, Theodora Magnus, age 44, admitted September 1938. Diagnosis: breast cancer, terminal stage. Treatment: Baker's proprietary injections. Result: deceased, November 1938. Theodora is still waiting in room 419. Still polite. Still hopeful her treatment will work. But room 419 isn't the most disturbing part of the Crescent Hotel. The basement, the morgue, the place where Norman Baker conducted his experiments and stored bodies before disposal. Guests on the hotel's ghost tour report hearing wailing, the sound of people in excruciating pain. The audio doesn't match any ambient noise in the building. It rises and falls in waves, as though coming from multiple sources simultaneously. And beneath the autopsy table, the original table from Baker's hospital, guests and guides have reported seeing children. Small figures huddled together, whispering. One phrase repeated: Norman Baker didn't just treat adults. He treated children, too. Families brought their dying kids hoping for a miracle. And when those children died, they were brought here. The Crescent Hotel has been investigated by dozens of paranormal research teams. In 2005, a team from the Atlantic Paranormal Society recorded over 40 distinct voices during an overnight investigation. Most were fragments, single words, incomplete sentences, but 3 were clear, unmistakable, and all 3 said the same thing. 2 hotels, 2 tragedies. 2 sets of voices that refuse to fade. But they're not alone. The Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio, originally a medical building with a basement morgue, reports guests hearing footsteps and whispers in hallways late at night. The Crockett Hotel, blocks away, has identical reports, disembodied voices echoing through halls. Even the Sheraton Gunter Hotel, a luxury property, has documented cases of guests calling the front desk to complain about voices outside their rooms when security checks confirm the hallways are empty. If this were isolated to one building, we could attribute it to architecture, acoustic anomalies, pipes and ventilation creating illusions. But when the same phenomenon occurs across different buildings, in different cities, with different designs, what are we actually hearing? Here's where science offers one possible explanation. Infrasound. Sound waves below the range of human hearing, below 20 hertz. These frequencies are inaudible, but they affect us physiologically. They create feelings of unease, dread, anxiety. They can even cause visual distortions, making people see things that aren't there. Old buildings generate infrasound naturally. HVAC systems, wind moving through corridors, structural resonances. The Stanley Hotel, with its steam heating and unique ventilation design, is an infrasound generator. When guests report feeling watched or hearing whispers, they might actually be experiencing the neurological effects of infrasound. Their brains are interpreting vibrations as voices. Their anxiety is creating the narrative. That's one explanation. But it doesn't explain Theodora introducing herself by name. It doesn't explain guests hearing specific phrases that match historical housekeeping scripts from decades ago. It doesn't explain the children under the autopsy table, whispering for help in languages some of them might not have spoken in life. Infrasound can make you feel like you're being watched. It can't make you hear a woman say, "I'm Theodora. I'm a patient of Dr. Baker's." So, what's happening in these hotels? Are we hearing echoes of the past? Literal recordings somehow embedded in the building materials, replaying when conditions are right? Are we experiencing residual hauntings? Emotional imprints left by trauma, playing out like psychic loops for those sensitive enough to perceive them? Or is something more complex at work? Quantum physics suggests that observation affects reality. Consciousness isn't separate from the universe. It's woven into it. Some researchers theorize that human consciousness, especially in moments of extreme emotion, might leave traces in the environment. Not metaphorically, literally. Trauma, fear, love, desperation. These aren't just feelings. They're electrical and chemical events in the brain, broadcasting energy into the surrounding space. What if buildings don't just house us? What if they absorb us? Elizabeth Wilson, lighting lanterns for decades after surviving an explosion, repeating the same phrases night after night. Are you comfortable? Can I bring you anything? Theodora Magnus, waiting for a miracle that never came, politely introducing herself to anyone who enters her room. The children in the basement, calling for help that never arrived. These aren't random voices, they're specific, consistent, personal. If you died in a moment of profound confusion, fear, or hope, would a part of you keep repeating that moment? Would you become a whisper in the walls, waiting for someone to finally hear you? Here's what makes the whispering hotel phenomenon so unsettling. It's still happening. In 2019, during renovation work at the Crescent Hotel, construction crews discovered glass bottles buried beneath the basement floor. Inside were mysterious concoctions, remnants of Norman Baker's so-called treatments, medical specimens, evidence of his fraud. The discovery made national news. And that same month, reports of voices in the basement increased dramatically. Housekeepers refused to go down there alone. Guests on the ghost tour reported hearing not just wailing, but clear words, as if the act of uncovering physical evidence of their suffering gave the voices new strength. At the Stanley Hotel, room 217 is now the most requested room in the building. Guests book it specifically hoping to experience something paranormal, and many do. But here's the strange part. The phenomenon has evolved. Recent reviews don't just mention a woman's voice, they mention multiple voices. Conversations, as if the room has become a gathering place for something we can't see. One guest in 2023 recorded audio on their phone overnight. When they played it back, they heard their own voice asking, "Is anyone there?" They never asked that question aloud. The whispers continue. In Colorado, in Arkansas, in Texas, in old hotels where tragedy soaked into the walls and never quite left. Science offers explanations: acoustic anomalies, infrasound, psychological suggestion. But science doesn't explain the names, the consistency, the specificity. Maybe the real question isn't, are these hotels haunted? Maybe the question is, what does it mean to be haunted? If a voice calls your name in an empty hallway, does it matter whether it's a ghost, an acoustic trick, or something we don't have words for yet? If you hear it, if it affects you, isn't it real? Some guests who've experienced the whispering hotel phenomenon report feeling not fear, but recognition, as if the voices weren't strangers, as if they were remembering something they'd forgotten. Before we close this case file, I want to ask you something. If reality is listening, if consciousness leaves traces in the spaces we occupy, what are you asking it to do? What moments are you repeating? What words are you whispering into the walls of your life, hoping someone will finally hear? We spend so much time looking for ghosts. Maybe we should spend more time wondering what kind of ghosts we're becoming. The Stanley Hotel still operates. Room 217 is still the most requested. Guests still report voices. The Crescent Hotel still runs its ghost tours. Theodora still introduces herself in room 419. The children still whisper in the basement. And across America, in dozens of historic hotels, guests continue checking in, locking their doors, and hearing voices that shouldn't be there. Maybe they're echoes. Maybe they're memories. Maybe they're something we don't have the language to describe yet. But they're there, whispering, waiting, hoping someone will finally listen. Share your own strange experiences with us in the comments below. I read every single one. And some of your stories might become future investigations. Your engagement helps this channel grow and allows me to research deeper into cases like this. Because these stories, they're not just about the past. They're about the traces we all leave behind, the echoes that remain long after we're gone. This has been Past Beyond Memory. Be safe, be kind, and know you are appreciated.